Live from the Green Room Studios, from the spacious property of Bates Nursery and Garden Center, 3810 Whites Creek Pike, it's the At Home Show with Josh Carey and David Bates.
Oh, yeah. Everybody join us. It's Saturday morning. It's time for the At Home Show. We're here for you. It's a tradition. Yeah. Every Saturday morning, 8 o'clock. It's been doing it for decades, for parts of millennia, for just forever and ever and ever.
You and I would not be anywhere else on Saturday mornings. We wouldn't even know what to do if our Saturday mornings did not begin, together.
Well, I think we have two people in our lives that would probably find something for us to do.
Yes, maybe that's why we continue to do it.
Could be. Hey, we are coming to you live from the Green Room Studios here at Bates Nursery Garden and Garden Center.
Yeah,
the nursery and center and garden.
Just like it says right there, right above my head.
Oh, okay. Hey, we're here for you. It's going to be a great day. It's not going to be.
We have finally broken through the severe heat wave, and unfortunately for others, both east and west, it's not the case. But today for us, it's going to be a rather pleasant day, comparatively speaking. 86 degrees for the high end, mostly cloudy conditions. I did see a little bit of sunshine before I walked into the studio just a few moments ago, but there'll be more clouds than sun today, and that will hold the temperatures down and keep things rather pleasant. So if you're getting ready to get out and work in the garden, it's really going to be a good time. We've had some rain in the ground, so even though pulling weeds may not be your favorite thing to do, the soil conditions are going to be working with you. So get out there and do whatever it is that you're interested in doing in the garden. 86 today and cloudy tomorrow. Quite a bit better chance for thunderstorms. Maybe 3/4 of an inch. You never know about these storms. And unfortunately, our friends in eastern Kentucky found out terribly with some areas getting more than a foot of rain, and they've got more rainfall on the way. We hopes and prayers and thoughts go out to everyone and those. It's a really tragic situation, as is the case also with many people in St. Louis who just a few days earlier had a very similar situation. So weather awareness is always a good thing to keep in mind. So 82 tomorrow and thunderstorms on Monday, 88. And maybe a few thunderstorms in the early morning hours, and then it'll be just kind of mostly cloudy to partly cloudy as it rolls on into Tuesday. We get back into the 90s by then, 93 degrees on Tuesday, 94 on Wednesday, and mostly sunny. And again on Thursday, mostly sunny conditions. Friday, we get a few thunderstorms possibly back in. Next Saturday could be partly cloudy, because anything that far in the future, it's all speculation. It's weather speculation. And then possibly some scattered thunderstorms. This is kind of the typical forecast for this time of year. Currently, it's 71 degrees at Bates Nursery Station here live from the Green Room. And we want to welcome you in and invite your questions. You can get those out to us either through a variety of social media connections, either through the At Home Show pages, which is either our Facebook or Instagram.
And Alita's watching from McMinnville. Good morning, ma'am.
Good morning. And also through our Bates Nursery and Garden Center pages. And we
maybe YouTube. We'll see.
Yeah, we're
having some trouble with YouTube this morning.
That, by the way, who's that, David?
Yeah, that's Tyler Blankenship. And good morning, Tyler, and welcome in today.
Good morning, everyone.
And Tyler's the guy who touches the screens and adjusts
and touches your hearts.
Yeah. And then laughter you hear on the other end of the studio, of course, is coming from Caroline Gant, Austin Lowen. Good morning, guys. Welcome in today. And a plethora of cacti abounds around. I know Caroline did a webinar this week.
A good one, by the way.
Yes. Thank you.
I
had fun.
An hour and 15 minutes worth. So a lot of interest from people from all around. Many questions on how to do well with cactus and succulents to some degree. And so we'll be certainly talking about that as we go through. Austin, welcome to you this morning. Good morning. We'll also be talking to Austin about pretty much everything because that's the way.
Stunning, Austin Lohan.
Stunning.
You know what's going on in Nashville this weekend? I mean, this is the wrestling capital of the world this weekend.
Oh, yep.
We have SummerSlam and Starrcade in Nashville, Tennessee.
I actually can honestly say I had no idea.
You.
I just don't.
Jet flying.
I don't.
Limousine riding. One-time award-winning host of the At Home Show did not know that this was going on.
No.
You didn't?
I kind of have a busy life. There's a lot of other little things going on horticulturally for me. So, anyway, we welcome everyone in today, and we welcome your questions. We've got some out there in the queue, and want to remind you, get out there and check that out. And this is podcasted, so it's viewable anytime, and even if it's not going out live on YouTube right this moment, we will get it posted up there, and it'll get there. It just may be slightly delayed. Such is life with technology. You just deal with it. And
there's an upgrade that happened this week. So I mean, again, technically speaking, there was an upgrade.
Our hopes were high, and I don't know that the new hardware was an issue. It's just a YouTube issue, or
it doesn't recognize
this is a software thing.
Yeah.
So okay.
Flip of a coin, really.
So
we already have a question, though.
Well, shall we just go right to that then?
Sure. From the Bates Facebook page, RC is asking, can I cut my lilies down after they bloom so they don't block sun from other plants?
All right. Lilies. I wonder which one. Maybe Asiatic.
Probably Asiatic.
Probably.
If I had to guess,
yeah,
that would be my guess.
Yeah, they get pretty large, and they do cast some shade on other things. So, yeah, it's if the blooms have faded and they've pretty much have spent, then, yeah, you can go ahead and cut that flower stalk off. I would prefer you to keep those leaves up as much as you can, though. Now, that plant is kind of funny because it sends its leaves up with its stalk, and then it blooms atop of that. So, you might just cut it like 2/3 of the way down and leave, some of those leaves up. That just gives you some extra kind of energy for next season and to get a good bloom cycle for next year as well. So, yes, you can shorten, but please try to leave some of it up and let it just naturally turn brown itself.
And it'll really negatively affect the performance next year if you get too carried away with that. So, I think it's a good call to simply reduce the height a little bit, but don't cut it all the way back.
Yep.
Leave some foliage up there.
Good question, though. That goes with most bulbs, just so you know. Most bulbs you'll kind of want to keep up until they naturally go brown themselves. Good one. All right, starting strong.
Yes, we are. We ready to just dive into the
You
rest?
jump right in there.
Go right ahead,
Caroline is the diva of the At Home Show.
Well,
She
such a diva. I would say that would be Austin.
You could
but
go
that's just
Mickey
my
James
opinion.
on people. I promise you that. I know you could.
Probably, yeah. All right, here we go.
could be.
First question, or second question. My perennial garden looks a little sad. Yellowing leaves, lots of drooping after all the heat, and now the hard rains here in Inglewood. Is it too late in the season to give it some organic fertilizer?
Never. Always a good time. Always good practice. Never a bad idea to add organics. Never. I mean, really, it's always good to throw that in there. And yeah, gardens, especially perennial gardens, this time of year with the heat that we have had so early, things are looking tired. So really, a general cleanup is probably in order first. Let's go ahead and get rid of those yellowing leaves, things that are looking rough. Let's give things cutbacks. Let's deadhead. If you have a lot of perennials, you have a lot of deadheading to do. That's just old spent blooms. So going in and cleaning those up and just giving it a general cleanup makes everything look a lot better. And then after you get all that foliage and old stuff and nasty looking stuff out of the garden and cleaned up, then you go back with your organics. Like we have here, our product Supernatural, that's excellent for rejuvenating a soil bed and getting it ready for next season is never bad practice. So yeah, go ahead and get it done. Just give them a cleanup.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, to show we practice what we preach, we are applying Supernatural in the process of it to everything growing around here at the nursery. So we've got substantially through that process. And even though it is not sold as a fertilizer, it does nonetheless have very high fertility properties, and it adds a lot, not just in terms of nitrogen, phosphate, and potash, but it also adds a lot of microbial benefits and other things such as mycorrhizal fungi, humic acid.
Oh, yeah.
And those are things that really
Oh, yeah.
add to the vitality of the soil and enable the plant, Josh, to be able to take up
I use it.
natural
I know it's good stuff,
nitrogen
man.
out of the air. And the great thing about it is, as Austin touched on, you cannot burn a plant. You cannot over apply it. So you'll see that the containers have been almost filled across the top with it. So it's a great additive, and particularly when you're coming out of a hot spell like we've been, it's a great stress reliever for the plants. Gives them some nutrition. And another thing that we've touched on this week in the newsletter was about the need to trim, and we'll talk about that certainly as we go through the program today.
We should.
So back to
We
you,
better.
Caroline.
Okay, we got a crepe myrtle question up next. Type of crepe myrtle that doesn't send up shoots from the base. Are there any?
I wish to tell you that there was. Not that I've observed anyway. They're all going to want to send up sucker sprouts. That's just kind of crepe myrtle for you. I will say, like, as they age and they get older and you start to see, like, really main pronounced stems on them, you don't see suckering as bad, or at least I don't. I've got a large crepe myrtle in my bed. It's kind of the anchor point of my whole bed. And I don't really see sucker growth anymore, but it is a large tree now. I mean, it's got main stems on it that are probably 4 or 5 inch caliper. So it's kind of big, and like I said, it does not send out many suckers anymore. So I think age maybe just kind of cleans that up. But I do notice a lot around town driving around that you see a lot of, a big tree up top with a bush down below, if you will, if you don't, clean that up. So I hate to tell you that, but honestly, when they're younger and when they're in their adolescence, they still send up those sucker sprouts. So you kind of just have to.
And I think it's worth mentioning for those who may not understand the use of the word. The word he's using is not SUCKER. It's not sucker. It's not suckers.
Sucker.
It's SUCCOR, which is literally growth that comes from. It's a terminal shoot that comes out either directly off the stem or from just below the soil line. That they're energy robbers, and unless you want a multi-trunked effect, you need to keep those removed. And I do agree with you. If you're diligent at removing them early on, they do become less problematic. The cultivars that are less noticeable on are the more low growing and bushy types, because that's really, in that situation, they're desirable. So you wouldn't even notice if they're coming out from a basal sucker growth coming out of it. So suckers are not always a bad thing, but if you've got a single stem or tree form, you don't want them.
Yeah, and I know that was a good point. I've touched on this before a couple weeks ago, talking about the kind of shrub form crepe myrtles. Y'all need to get on board with these. I'm telling you. I've been driving around town. I passed a house yesterday that had a loaded up scenario of mass crepe myrtles, probably 9 of them down a brick wall of a home. I mean to tell you, the color they were throwing off was intense. I mean, on every single stem, they were red, and it just looked like this just huge shrub. And they were only like 3 feet tall and probably, I don't know, equally as wide. But they filled this whole massing scenario along a hot spot of a wall that you've got or whatever. And they are awesome. I mean, really, really colorful, great little shrub to use. And like David said, you don't notice they're suckers if they do sucker, because they're little shrubs. Sometimes, I will say this, my brother planted these a number of years ago, and what I did notice is that if a sucker sprout did come up, it would go way atop of the shrub. So it's obviously noticeable that was trying to kind of what we call revert and go back to kind of a tree form habit, if you will. So if you do see that, take that sucker all the way to the ground, and you'll keep your shrub form tight.
What can we do?
I like keeping a pair of special pruners. If you have sucker issues on plants, having a pair of hand pruners that you're not trying to necessarily keep razor sharp, that you can really push down to the ground and clip those off down deep, because and as you were just mentioning, you don't want to simply trim those off with the rest of the plant, because they're going to keep outgrowing the rest of the plant and doing that reversion that you're talking about. It's not the plant you bought; it's the plant, the understock that is grafted onto or budded onto, or however the particular plant is done.
Now, Austin, and I see it at my house. We prefer the bush form on our red rockers too. So, but when we have these downpours, is there anything that we can do to keep them up more upright or help them strengthen up on the smaller limbs and stuff? Because when they're full of blooms, and as you mentioned, they are just absolutely covered this week.
Yeah, they'll bloom on pretty much every stem, no matter if it's a fat stem or a skinny stem. So that's kind of your issue. You can achieve better results by pruning out stems that are like smaller than a pencil size. Anything kind of that size or less will still bloom on top of that. And then when you get rains, like you mentioned, they'll flop on you. And there's not much you can do about it at that point. So doing your pruning over the winter to get them in check and keeping the stems that are the sturdiest are going to be your best bet on that.
Okay.
Yep. So.
Great.
All right.
Here we go. We're getting into fall questions now, which is exciting.
Now, it's just around the corner. It will be here before you know it.
It will be, and I'm ready for it. Maybe that means winter's coming. No, I'm not. I take it back. When should I plant my fall annuals so roots can be established and for best selection?
What do you say, about 2:30 today?
2:30.
No.
I think they're being the time of year. is
Oh,
what they're-
okay.
I think
So fall annuals. This is actually
You got
a
any?
very good question, and it's a big time misconception on when to plant fall annuals. People hear fall and they wait till fall to plant them, and like I said, this is a good question because that's not the case. You really need to plant your fall annuals whenever temperatures are still warm during the day but cooling at night. So I don't have an exact date for you on this because it changes every year, but typically in around this mid-September time is whenever it's time to kind of get either fall veg or fall annuals, say like pansies and stuff. Pansies are the biggest fall annual by far, and they will last clean through the wintertime if you plant them early enough. So get them in when they still have time to grow during the day and really get a lot of leaves, on the plant, get a nice little bushy plant. And then as those fall temps start to come in, you'll start to see those pansies blooming, which is what we all love, and they'll keep blooming through the wintertime if you do this.
the difficult thing that the dilemma that faces every avid gardener is, I've got these beautiful summer annuals that are still looking, outstanding.
Yep.
And the thought of taking those out and planting something else back then is almost more than many can bear. And consequently, because they can't make that tough decision to go ahead and do it while they still appear to be in their prime, they lose the opportunity, as you said, to capitalize when you're having warm, sunny days and get the growth coming on, get the root systems really established well so that the pansies can make their best display throughout the winter. I'll always offer the solution to folks that if you really have got things, if you've got wax begonias or whatever they are, and you want to keep them a while, we'll give you some free containers. We get a lot of containers that come back in over here.
Really?
We'll give you some free nursery pots, some 1 gallon pots. You could dig them up and pot them and give them away as gifts to friends, or put them around the patio area and continue to enjoy them and get your beds ready and plant your pansies at the proper time. It is a common mistake. And the other part of it is by the time a lot of people get ready, the selection is already very much less prevalent. So
Have they even started to come in yet?
No.
no, and they
Maybe
won't.
weeks,
They
yeah.
won't for more than a month yet.
Okay.
But they do. It does need to be cooling. But it's still. Last time I checked, it's still July, so it's going to be no earlier than the first week, probably 10 days of September before we'll even have the earliest ones in, and then the selection will really expand greatly for the coming month, and then it tapers off fast because the growers who used to speculatively grow a lot of extra ones have stopped doing that.
Really?
They've found it's expensive to dump
Wow.
things, so you really need to be diligent about that. So
All right. Creeping time question. Does it do well in Tennessee? Should I plant it now or wait until the fall?
Yeah. Good
I know
question.
I've heard a lot of chatter about creeping time
well,
over our radio.
I
so
find
it's
the
popular.
older I get, the faster time seems to
doesn't
go.
creep,
It
it
doesn't
runs.
creep at all. Yeah, it's in a full out sprint.
Yeah. But to answer your question,
Oh, you mean THYME?
Yes.
That's that
There
one.
it is.
Okay.
Clearing up that
It's all about.
confusion.
It's making sure you get the right spelling. Synonyms can be dangerous.
Yep, that's right. So to answer that, though, yes, creeping time does fine here. It really does. I would probably avoid planting it right now just because I mean, you can. Don't get me wrong. The plants don't care if you plant them right now. You just have to work with them to get them through this month of August. I mean, I think we've had a false sense of summer this year because we got so hot so quick, y'all. It ain't even August yet. I mean, that's our hottest month, is it not? I mean, consistently. Generally.
Hopefully not this year.
Yeah.
But,
We'll see. But it's very hard on you to plant plants this time of year, especially small plants, which creeping thyme comes in typically a very small container. If they miss a watering for literally like a day or two, they can start going crispy on you. So larger plants are a little bit easier to deal with because you can really soak them and not have to worry so much. But and little ones don't have that big root system, so they're kind of starving for water if you don't give it to them. So you might avoid doing it right now, and I'll say that too because I'm pretty sure we don't have any creeping thyme right now.
No, we don't.
Yeah, but they perennialize just fine here. So planting in the fall is a fine practice if you want. And we should have plenty of selection of that. We do have the whole new round of herbs that come in with our pansies and fall crops as well. So you'll be able to choose from that. But if you want to wait until spring and let it, plant it in the spring and let it get a full season of an established root system, then that's a fine practice too. So
Is it edible?
It is edible, yes. We sell it in the herb section, and then we also sell it in the kind of ornamental perennial section where they've kind of hybridized a lot of them to be more bloomy, for lack of a better horticulture term.
Yeah, it's a technical term, bloomy.
That's kind of like floofy.
They really
it goes with floofy.
Yeah, they really focus on trying to get a bunch of ornamental qualities out of the creeping thyme, so that whenever they're in bloom, they can be just a blanket of little tiny flowers. A beautiful little plant.
I can tell Austin's been going to the Josh Carey School of Nomenclature. It's more of a bloomy kind of a flower.
Yeah. So good question. No, it lives just fine here. So good plant to grow.
Okay, we've got some great questions today. Are we ready for another? We got a cactus question here. Tyler?
Yeah, real quick. We're on YouTube, so good morning. Good morning, YouTube.
Hello, YouTube.
Hi,
It finally
YouTube.
came back. And before you answer this question about cactus, we want to talk about the tremendous webinar at a little more length. Hopefully we can kind of wrap that into the answer. But you did an hour and 15 minute long webinar. There was so much interest in it this week, Caroline. And who knew there's so much interest in cacti and succulents? So tell us about tell us what the question is, and then we can expound on that.
All right, yeah, we'll start with the question and then go into more cactus talk. Prickly pear has leaves and pads. Doesn't seem to be a pest. What else could this be? So those are probably going to be the spines. I mean, it could be a couple things. And spines are just a modified leaf on your prickly pear cactus. And we have one right here. This is a spineless variety. So with a lot of the spineless...
So does that make it unmodified? If it's
unmodified. Well,
okay.
they still do have little tiny ones.
Okay.
And a lot of times with the spineless ones, the new growth, so when it starts to grow a little pup, it'll be small. It'll grow out of one of these nodes.
So they're the almost prickly pears.
The
then.
almost prickly pears.
Okay.
But the new little pups will start to have what looks like leaves. They're not quite what looks like a spine, like the pokey little needle thing. But it looks
Pokey
more
is
like
technical term.
It's a Josh term. A sharp little pokey thing. But it looks more like a leaf. But it's still a spine, and those will usually just drop off. So without seeing a picture, that's probably what it is. Now, if it looks like some kind of weird growth or mutation, it could be witch's broom on your cactus, which is very unfortunate, and it does spread to all your other cacti. And it's not just specific to cactus. It's just a disease that's spread by pests. So if you want to send a photo, that would be great. If it doesn't really look like a leaf, like I said, if it looks more like a mutation.
Virus. It's actually a virus. That's
I know
why
we get
it's
it
so
on trees
That's
and
why
stuff,
it's so
yeah.
dangerous. Now, sometimes witches' brooms are cultivated to produce new cultivars that they exhibit some kind of stable growth habit. That's not the norm, but occasionally that's the case. But I think your point is that if you've got an effective plant in there and you can separate it from the others, it's probably a good idea to do that, right?
Yeah, you will want to do that. And with the cacti, with that specific thing, it will come out of the nodes. So it might look like a leaf that's coming out, but as it grows, it starts to look like another little pup coming out that's growing really weird. But it will eventually kind of take over your entire plant and then spread to your other ones.
Could they cut that part out and let it?
What I've done before is I will just cut, and I'll make sure I get at least 2 inches down from that like mutation, cut it off, and it should resolve itself. And if it doesn't, you can keep cutting or just throw away your plant, which is real sad.
Oh, wow.
But chances are you just have a spine that's coming out of some new growth. So,
Well, there's just not a lot of cacti surgeons available in the area. Tree surgeons are a lot more prevalent, but cacti surgeons not so much.
I
So-
love cutting on cactus.
Yeah, I was about
It's
to say
so fun.
Caroline's probably the best surgeon cactus grower in Middle Tennessee.
I would probably not the best, but I do love it. I'm very enthusiastic about it.
I tell you what I'd like for you to do,
Well, to
Caroline.
be the best, you have to beat the best, Caroline.
I
And so,
want to
mean,
come
That is
back.
true.
I want to come back and talk about your webinar that you did,
Yes.
but let's just give just a moment to talk about growing things. And no matter what you're trying to grow, Earth Mix Garden Products, we feel like is the best solution for whatever is ailing your plants. Maybe you don't really perceive that there's anything ailing them. But maybe at this time of year, as we mentioned just a bit ago, the plants are just looking a little less than wonderful. Maybe they need a little de-stressment. And you can use Earth Mix Supernatural as a top dress compost. And the great thing about it is that your plants really gain a lot of nutritional value from it. Now, it's not sold as a fertilizer, but your plants don't know that, Josh.
Really?
Your plants think that it is because they really respond accordingly, not only from the amount of organic material that is built up in the soil from the compost itself, it's all the other great things that are in it, the endo and ecto mycorrhiza fungi, humic acid, and all the, not to mention all the other organic material. All those things really combine together to produce a very viable and very nutritious top dress for your plants. So if your plants are looking a little bit
Shaggy.
Well, yeah. If you want to give them
Cruddy.
this is the time of year to do it because they're still very much in active
Skanky.
growth. Combined with any other adjective you've got, Josh, just hold them till after I'm done. But yes, all those adjectives and more. And maybe you're just transplanting plants. And of course, Earth Mix Landscape is the product that we recommend for that.
Absolutely.
And perhaps you just need to kind of replace the soil. Earth Mix Garden is good for a wide variety of purposes, both for in the ground planting or even in a raised bed situation. Proganics O, Proganics I for indoor plants, and those are the things that are mostly in Caroline's world. So no matter what you're talking about, all the Earth Mix line of plants, including Earth Mix Viragra, which is the Earth Mix worm castings. Make sure you check that out. If you're looking for the gold standard for amendments,
That's
is it. So check them all out at earthmix.net. And you can go over and see the Find Earth Mix tab. Once you're there, it's on the top right of the screen. And you just click on that. And then you will see a map come up that has all these pins all over Middle Tennessee and Kentucky, even up into Indiana and Ohio. You could put your address in for turn-by-turn directions, or you could just simply zoom in for a location near you. So check that out at earthmix.net. And remember this, success in gardening begins at the ground level when you use Earth Mix Garden products.
Yep.
And we appreciate you giving us a moment to talk about that. So I want to go straight back to Caroline.
Okay.
Talk about her very long form webinar this week on cacti.
Caroline talks about cactus like I talk about roses and
Yep.
hydrangeas.
I was just about to say I was competing with Austin for his lengthy rose webinar that he did
The
last year.
enthusiasm, you cannot contain that level of enthusiasm, nor should you even try.
No, I will never try. And I could have talked about it for another 3 hours, but I don't think I would have held everyone's interest for that long.
How many cactus do you actually have?
I haven't really counted, but a lot.
Ballpark.
Like over 100 probably. maybe like 75. I don't know. I'll count this evening, but I do have some like global planters with
This
a bunch
evening.
of different varieties in it. So there's a lot all around my house. It gets a little prickly in there in the wintertime. But speaking of Earth Mix, we don't have Earth Mix doesn't have a specific cactus and succulent blend, but I do make mine out of Earth Mix that I love. I just use the Proganics Earth Mix indoor with perlite, and then I like to mix pine fines in with mine. there's differing opinions on putting pine fines or shredded pine mulch in your cactus soil, but I have great results. So.
Have you tried using Enlighten with that, Caroline?
Yes, I have. I have mixed it into the soil. I'll also sometimes put it in the bottom to help with drainage.
Right.
Or if I want to give it a nice little desert scape and help hold that plant into the pot, I will put it on top of
And
it.
Enlighten, for those who are not enlightened, is an expanded shale product that can be used both to incorporate with soils to promote drainage, and it can also be used on the surface, either for a decorative look, or if you have them in your landscape, say you've got hostas or that kind of thing in your landscape, and voles are being problematic. It's very sharp edges because of the way it's produced, and it cuts their little
feet.
Yes, it does. It is a great deterrent. It may be sad, but they'll go somewhere else. They just get the message that, hey, this is not a good spot. So,
Yeah.
Speaking of of wildlife, I just had this flash. This
boy.
morning I've got a headlamp on. I'm out here getting ready to irrigate. And I look underneath the building here, and I see this row of eyeballs set underneath. And then I see one raccoon come out after another from underneath the building on the opposite side.
Aw.
And I go, well, there's the whole family. I hope they're not nesting under there. Anyway, but then I keep hearing something. I go, that's very strange. And I noticed that the door is ajar on one of the they've gotten inside. And I looked in, I didn't see anything in there, but I could still hear it. And I realized it's in one of the big gray trash cans that has the domed lid on top that has the flap on it.
Oh, boy.
And one has gotten inside there. I can hear him in there, so I kick the top off, and he looks up at me like, dude, what are you going to do? So I gently laid it over and encouraged him to go, and he did walk out and gave me a little, hey, bro. And
I'm sure he did.
Before he went on, he actually did. He did pause. He didn't. I guess he knew that my intentions were not hostile. So anyway, there's my little varmint story for the day.
Critters.
I had to go ahead and get it out there, guys. I'm sorry before I forgot it. So
I love hearing critter
so
stories.
back to your back to
the webinar
We're gonna get there. I promise.
Well, you can watch it. Like David mentioned, it is an hour and 15 minutes long. I think Austin's Rose webinar was an hour and a half, so I don't quite beat him with time, but we talk about everything. I talk about repotting, watering, different varieties, and I mean,
How to
really
move
cover
them.
how to move them. I know Josh watched it.
Yes.
But yeah, it's very informative, very fun and exciting. And I go through a little plant tour of what we have in front of us. So we have a lot of webinars coming up for the month of August. I was trying to think of what month is next. I'm not sure what it is, what we have coming up. But, check it out. You can find it on the tab on the Bates Nursery website page. If you scroll down to the bottom, Bates Botanical Boot Camp will bring up all of our archived webinars. So, yeah,
Very
it was a
cool.
fun time. And thank you guys for joining me on that journey.
Right now, we've got sowing fall seeds August 4th. I'm getting ahead of myself. And then we'll have cover crops and transplanting webinars, as well as intro to houseplants with Caroline again.
That's
fun.
is that all next week, or is
that a
that
gen
just
ed course?
That's not all next week. No,
Okay,
only
now-
August 4th will be
That's
sowing
Melissa,
fall
right?
seeds with Melissa McKay.
Okay.
Yes, and then so consecutively in the weeks following, every Thursday at 9 a.m., we'll tackle these other topics.
And just one of our published authors here at Bates Nursery.
That's right. Yes, yes.
And hey, exciting
Really one.
stuff going on. Speaking of starting seeds, and Melissa McKay, who's our annual expert down there, she has started, gosh, I don't know, probably 30 or 40 flats of pansies and violas. So we are, when you talk about seeding and when to buy your annual stuff, someone has to seed that stuff earlier than when you're going to buy them. Obviously, they've got to be already up. So I noticed I walked back there yesterday, and there is a whole load of tiny little pansies popping up from seed back in those flats. So exciting stuff. Good work, Melissa. She spent like 2 full days sowing pansy seeds because they are tiny, y'all. It is a tedious task to do by hand. So she spent a lot of time on that and did a good job, and starting to see some results. So that's cool.
Yeah, and it's hard to think about a cool season plant. You have to start it when it's
Cool.
when it's hot.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, there's no time for it to get ready. I mean, you just have really shortened your window so
Where do they
much.
normally grow? I mean, is that a Florida type thing?
No.
or
They
is that
do
a-
mostly like in Michigan.
Oh.
Most of them will come out of the Cedar Rapids, Grand Rapids, Michigan area. There's a lot. I mean,
That's
there
Iowa.
are. That's true, but there could be Iowa also.
Iowa.
I'm getting my cities wrong up there, but regardless,
No, it's your states.
well, there's wrong city and wrong state.
Oh, okay.
So I'm getting it all wrong. But the part I think I am getting right is the fact that you do have to start those in the warm weather to have a chance to have them ready so that they can get established well enough. So there's the time when you optimally want to have them planted, and then you got to start backing up from that date and say, what does it take? When do I have to start germinating to achieve this? And that's the way it is done for growers. And they do a lot of little tricks. Starting further north increases the window of opportunity because it's statistically is less hot there. They also use a lot of things to help cool these houses. Maybe they have cool cells that is a type of somewhat air conditioning. It does lower the temperature a few degrees, and
Swamp cooler, really.
that's just essentially what it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The
And
swamp
also-
coolers don't work that great in the eastern U.S. by
No.
the way because of the humidity, but we already have a swamp and it's not very cool.
But also, too, Josh, to answer your question, we buy most of our pansies from Michigan, like David
Okay.
said. Bert Hobbles and Winky are two large nurseries that provide most of
Winky
our pansies.
pansies?
Yes, that's where we get all of our really nice pansies.
Cool.
But at the same time, there's a grower, Mr. Bob Powell, out in Pall Mall, Tennessee, with PWP greenhouses.
Yep.
He grows them here from seed every single year, and he does an excellent job of growing pansies as well. So we buy from them if we ever need to supplement as well, and
Sure.
he does an excellent job, and he's a Middle Tennessee grower, so they can be grown in a lot of different places.
Absolutely. So, it just about, it takes, starting from seed and getting things like that growing up properly. It's not simple. And there are a whole lot of tips and tricks that have to happen at exactly the correct time in order to make sure that the plants don't get stretched on you and don't flop. I mean, there's a lot to do. So, it's more than meets the eye to get that finished little plant ready to go in the ground.
Yeah, for a grower that is providing plants for a retail purpose, their timing is crucial. Like literally the most kind of crucial step you have to know. So year by year is different in Middle Tennessee, so they've got to kind of guess. It's kind of like being a farmer, when to set your stuff out, before frost or whatever. And timing is what it's all about. So
Very good.
there you
All
go.
right.
Okay, we got a question from Jude on the Bates Nursery Facebook
Hey, Jude.
page.
I knew it.
Hey. And we'll kind of
Don't be afraid. Jude.
click
Go
over
ahead and
here.
ask.
Hey.
So this is her Norfolk Island Pine.
Or as I heard someone erroneously refer to them as a Norway Forcus pine.
Wow, Forcus.
I
So
think that's a desire to try to create again nomenclature that doesn't actually fit. But you know what? It was pretty good.
nice, David.
All right.
So the question is, can I trim the top to move it inside? It's really tall.
It is really tall. It's looking good, so you're doing a good job with that. It's a good-looking little plant. If you do prune it, which you're probably going to have to because it is getting big, you got to prune. What else are you going to do? If it's getting too big, you got to do that, and plants can handle that. What you're going to see, though, is probably you're going to take that stem back to the rung of leaves that you want to keep, and take it to the top of that, and then what you might see is a split. You might get one, crack and just be another single stem, or you might get two. Which would be kind of cool, and that'll keep it a little shorter and keep it a little bushier. But yeah, most definitely you can cut on that. Don't be scared; it'll live just fine. It's got plenty of leaves.
But in the event it does get a fork or more than one growth bud coming out of the top of it, and you want to maintain the pyramidal shape, you can simply select whichever one you wish and prune the other one out, and it will maintain a more normal growth habit rather than having a more rounded and bushy growth habit. And Caroline and Tyler are mouthing something at each other. I don't know what that is.
You'll never
but-
know.
Never know.
Now, is it going to bleed a little bit on it when she cuts it?
Probably.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
Not bad though.
There is sap in there.
Yes, I know. I mean,
There is sap.
Norfolk Island Pine is so hardy. I mean, like such an easy houseplant to grow. It really is. With a lot of light, it is fine.
And the most typical trait that you see that occurs oftentimes for people is that they start looking upside down, where that the top gets really big and thick and the bottom looks very small. Now, that one's not so much. But you see they have full length light all the way up and down, which is very necessary to keep that effect from occurring. What happens when people have it in front of a window that's up above is that all that top growth grows and the bottom starts dying off or receding. So that's a nice looking Norfolk Island
Very
pine
nice
there.
one.
Reminds me I need to find mine and probably water it.
Find it?
I have one.
Oh,
I haven't
somewhere.
seen it in a minute. All right, are we ready for a new question?
Sure, not the same old question, a new
Not
one.
the same
one.
old question, a brand new hydrangea question. We got to get one of those once a week. My hydrangea blooms are burnt. Leaves are fine. Should I cut blooms or leave them be?
Good question. Either way, if you can't stand looking at those blooms because they look burnt and brown and dead and horrible, take them off. I mean, I can't stand that myself. Whenever blooms start to fade and they look bad, there's some plants that I can deal with it a little bit better, but hydrangeas for the most part, if they're turning brown, just cut them off. And that's just simply called deadheading. That's all we call that. If your leaves are happy and healthy, then you've got a strong plant. It's just literally just finished its bloom cycle, so that happens.
And that's really the primary reason why I like Annabelle hydrangeas so much is that when they go to that persistent stage, after they fade from white to that green stage, and they'll hold that for a long
time.
I mean, I don't ever cut those off. I think they look beautiful. And even as they turn that light tan color in the fall season, it's still very decorative. We just cut them all the way back to the ground, with that one time of year, and it really makes a great show. And they're still very beautiful. That lime green color this time of year, I think, is excellent.
They're really showing this year, too.
Yep.
Yeah. Speaking of that, hey, Austin, what's in bloom? Uh-oh.
In bloom.
With Austin.
Okay. Well, to be honest, I'm kind of getting into some overlap here. There's not a ton of new things that are in bloom. We still have, mimosa trees are still blooming. What's up with that? This is like week 6, week 7. Such a long blooming plant. Looking really pretty down the interstates. Hydrangeas, crape, myrtles, all still showing off. Grasses just started, like I mentioned last week. They're starting to kind of show their seed heads. They're looking nice. But let's get to the biggest one, the one that just kind of happened and is brand new. Dahlias.
Ooh.
Dahlias be blooming, y'all, and there is nothing better than dahlias in bloom. Dahlias is one of my favorite annuals to grow. I say to grow. It's not my favorite to grow. Me and Caroline were talking about this before the show.
I don't grow it.
She doesn't grow it. I haven't grown it in a couple of years. In the ground, dahlias are pretty good. Once again, Melissa in our annual department has her dahlias, and she showed me her first picture of her dahlia blooming the other day. Big old bloom, purple and white flecks all in it. There's all sorts of colors, shapes, sizes of dahlias. They are certainly worth growing. So they are popping off. And I will mention, if you're going to grow dahlias, let's just talk about dahlias a little bit. If you're going to grow dahlias in containers, make sure that your container is going to be large.
Yes.
Okay, you got to start with the big one. Now, by saying this, they are like bulbous type plants. So you can't, whenever they're young and they don't have a ton of leaves, do not keep that soil too wet, okay? Dahlias are thirsty plants, but that's as they age into the summer and they start to get a lot more foliage, they need a lot more water. So that's why I'm saying use a larger container. It'll help you out. You won't have to water them as much because they really fill a container pretty quickly.
I have mentioned before, but dahlias are a big part of the reason we are here today. My grandmother, when she first started our business 90 years ago, was growing dahlias, and she would cut the flowers, and my dad and my uncle would take them on their buggy downtown and sell those to people down. And while we're on this subject, and I'll just pause you for a moment there, Austin, we'll talk about why we're here. That's Bates Nursery and Garden Center, of course, and going all the way back to 1932 when my grandmother was indeed growing dahlias, and the other thing she really grew a lot of was geraniums. So in the hothouse, and so back in the day, that's the beginnings we came from, and we've been fortunate to get to hang around and continue to grow and really offer the most diverse selection of top quality plants anywhere, and that's not just in Nashville. It's anywhere. So if is a reason why people come from really long distances, at least make an annual pilgrimage to come see what we've got, because we do have things that are simply not available at a few other places around. So come out and see us at Bates Nursery and Garden Center, where we have got a lot going on right now. We've got a big sale going on. If you have, I'll scroll down here and show a picture. There's Austin right there.
Wow.
Hey, that's right, and a bit off the top, and Austin's showing his trimming skills there.
And the guns are out because the sun's out.
Oh yeah, he's got the shades on. He's looking. He's got that bad look, and that's Arizona cypress he's trimming on there, and with a pair of ARS shears. In case, so I get all my terminology in there. But the main thing is that my newsletter this week. The point is that this is the time to get your trimming done. So if you're going to trim something, you got to get it done now. And the reason is that new growth needs to have a chance to flush out and harden off before we have freezes. And I know freezes? Wait, what are you talking about?
Crazy, David Bates.
Well, that's not the point.
Okay.
That may be true, but it's not the point. The point is that you want them to fully harden off before cold weather returns, and that can take a few months. So just be mindful, trim them. We talked about Supernatural, and that's one of the things we're offering along with all Monrovia plants. We're offering Earth Mix Supernatural and all Monrovia plants at 20% off. So come anything that's in the band of Monrovia pot, and we've got a lot of them on the set here, including like this Vitex I've got here. If I can get it up high enough there we go. Monrovia pots, Monrovia plants, and we have the largest selection available anywhere of those. So come check it out, and we invite you to take some photographs of the area that you're working on. The rains have certainly helped us to get kind of back into a planting mode. The ground has softened up quite a lot.
Yes.
And with the prospects of more rain out in the future, we've got a really great opportunity to get some things in the ground and continue to work towards the fall season. It will be here before you know it. So come see us, Bates Nursery and Garden Center. We are conveniently located 1 mile north of Briley Parkway at exit 19 on Whites Creek Pike, which is just minutes from Rivergate, Opry Mills, Nashville West, downtown Nashville, Smyrna.
Yeah.
And I promise you, no matter where you're coming from, it's worth the drive from anywhere. Check out our website, batesnursery.com, where, incidentally, everything we sell is available for searching online. You can also, although the specials we have going on are only in store, you can still make purchases right online and set up from the purchase to delivery without ever leaving your house. So if you can't get out, it gives you another way to shop. Go out to batesnursery.com. Bates Nursery and Garden Center, beautifying Nashville since 1932, and we appreciate you giving us a moment to talk about that. And
can I add to that just a little bit?
I'm sure you can.
I'm going to.
Okay.
Folks, really, when David says this unusual stuff and things that you're not going to see everywhere else, I come out here every Saturday morning, and I love it because there is always something new to see. When David and I met this morning,
it's a little more interesting than going to a radio station.
Yes, it is. And I mean, you see things and you look over here, and I'm literally caught my eye. I walked halfway across the lot to look at that one conifer there.
Busted something too in the process.
It was that I've got my skid goes, and then you look back over to the other side. There's something I'm going to have to go see when we get done. But I mean, folks, you need to come out and just see this place. It is amazing
we're always working to try to improve our facilities, and we have that underway as we speak. So excuse the bit of mess that we're putting forth, but it's really in the effort to really improve the shopping experience here and make it more of a year-round kind of a deal here, to make it even in inclement weather conditions that you can come out and shop and still have a very enjoyable time. So thank you for that, Josh.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So now we're going to pitch it back to Austin now that I've completely interrupted your train of thought.
Dahlias. You were at dahlias.
We
there,
were.
Austin. Okay.
Yeah. So I think I pretty much wrapped it up. Honestly, it's an excellent plant to grow. Now, do know here in Middle Tennessee, they don't always perennialize. They can come back year after year, but usually they don't. So to get best success here after they finish up their blooming, and they finished up and we're getting into kind of some cooler temps, you want to lift those bulbs before it gets too cold. You want to lift them up out of the ground, put them in a paper bag, and keep them kind of in a, if you had the perfect ideal, root cellar, that's where you want to keep them if you could, at like a 50-degree environment. But a simple shed typically will work. Your garage attached to your house will work, just to keep them out of those really freezing temperatures. And then you can simply replant them next spring and enjoy them year after year because they are certainly worth growing. So
Absolutely.
there you go. Dahlias.
Lovely. Dahlias. All right, so I do want to wrap it back around to that Facebook question that we got about the Norfolk Island Pine. I do
You mean the Norway Forcus
the
pine?
Norway Forcus pine. So in my experience with topping them, they don't grow back. It stunts them, and just wanted to throw that out there.
Well,
so that might happen to yours.
It still comes back. It's just slow. They are slow to respond, but they don't just sit there forever.
You will see growers at time trim younger ones back, and they'll be they're abnormally thick, and sometimes they even cheat a little bit and plant multiple plants in the same pot and then trim them, so that really gives them an unusually and really a non-manageable type. I don't like that personally. I think if you got to cut them, like Austin said, you got to cut them, but they are not, but as Caroline mentioned, they're not going to be happy with you when you do that. And you need to get that done as soon as possible. Particularly if you're using them out in a patio area, give them as much time as you can. Back to what I was talking about trimming, let that new growth return and have a chance to start to harden off a little bit before we get into cooler season. Of course, you're going to be moving that inside, but it still needs to get that availability of light for as long as it can. So, all right,
here we go. I wasn't saying, Austin, that you were wrong. It just takes a very long time. The last time I topped one, it was a while, and I thought it was dead, and then it wasn't. So I just don't want them to think they might have killed it. All right,
Kilt.
Kilt it dead.
Kilt.
Kilte.
Dead. All right, Fiddle Fig's top is bending over. Help. So this could be a couple different reasons. If you have a lot of new growth and then it dries out, it's going to, the leaves will turn down just because it needs water, like a lot of plants, leafy plants will do. That's been happening in the nursery lately. When we get our new shipments in of fiddle leaf figs, I usually have to water them right away because with the sunlight combined with how much they were growing at the nursery this time of year, because they're very actively growing, they will start to wilt as soon as I watered them. A couple hours later, they perked back up. Now, it could be that your plant is really, really happy and growing very quickly, and it hasn't quite,
it's weeping from joy, is what you're saying.
It's weeping from joy, which has actually happened to my Bambino fiddle leaf, just a smaller variety, the dwarf variety of the fiddle leaf fig. I just kind of let it go. It was weeping for about a month, and then as those branches strengthened, it's growing back up. Now, if it's an older, more mature one, what you can do if it's just driving you crazy, you can go ahead and cut it, like we were talking about with the Norfolk Island Pine. You can cut it back. This is the perfect time of year. You'll actually want to do it now if you can, and it'll start branching out and just make that basically mother branch a lot smaller, or smaller and stronger. Stronger was the word I was trying to say. It will start branching out of that, and so you have that option if you don't like that weeping look that your fiddle leaf fig is doing. And again, you want to do it this time of year. I topped one in September or November of last year, just completely cut it. About 2 feet was the size of the stem. And it took almost 8 months for it to branch back out, but it eventually did. So if you cut it and, it's not doing anything, it's just resting a little bit. It'll start pushing back out. But yeah, chances are your fiddle leaf fig is just really, really happy, and it's going to pull through. So yeah, let me find our next question.
Okay.
It's a sand question. How to know if I should add sand when planting? Think grasses have too much water.
That's interesting. Sand is funny. We don't really have sand in our soil here. You know, and it can serve as a somewhat good drainage option, but I like to try to, you know, mimic what we have here as much as we can. You know, we live in, you know, one of the biggest hardwood forests of the world. I mean, we got so many species of plant, either small shrub or tree. I mean, just so much. We've got a good soil base here in Middle Tennessee. We really do. But there are pockets of areas that are like heavy clay or really gummy clay. We all have clay, okay? We have to deal with that. But if you ever dig up and you've got like clay that's almost like Play-Doh, like it sticks together on itself, then that is certainly a scenario where you want to amend your soil with something. And I'm just not a big proponent on sand. I really like either our Enlighten, which is our expanded shale, which is tiny little rocks pretty much. That's good for drainage. And then also pine fines, which is just,
really the combination between having a physical particle that won't break down and the introduction of organic materials such as the pine fines or earth mixed landscape, something that will create pore space, because the clay, like you're talking about, is devoid of organic material completely. And sand is such a fine particulate product that when you introduce that into a clay type material, you get sandy clay or bricks. Yes,
you get bricks,
and it doesn't work. With the clay that we have here, there are loamy clays where that it can work, but most of the clay we have here is not of that nature. So we don't recommend sand as an amendment, nor do we use it as an amendment.
No.
And that goes with cactus as well. People like to mix sand in with their cacti soil because they think desert. Then they think beach, they think sand. I also stay away from mixing sand in with my cactus soil. I did when I first started really getting into growing cacti, and then I noticed that it kind of compacts the soil and actually holds in too much moisture. It just like traps the water in the soil.
And it's heavy.
And it's very, very heavy. Not fun to move those pots. All right, we're to our final question of the morning.
I got one in the bag here in my head in case we.
Okay.
So
all right,
we got one on the
though.
At Home Show page too.
Okay, so this is our final question on Instagram for the morning.
Okay.
Are we ready?
We're ready.
Whose finishing move was called the mulch over? Hint, it is not Tyler.
Not Tyler. You know who had the mulch over.
I do indeed.
The one, the only. The round mound of sound.
Absolutely.
Chris Ladd. Who, by the way, is going to Starcade.
Was that your question submitted, Josh?
It was from a guy in Smyrna. I don't know.
Yeah, Josh and Chris Ladd, a.k.a. the Round Mound of Sound. He was. They're huge fans of the wrestling, not wrestling, but wrestling.
He's a much bigger fan than I am.
He's a double size, at least.
Plus size boy.
Okay. Here's my little question. I know you say you've got another one, Tyler, but a question I've gotten a couple of times this week through my newsletter that I write is that this is the time of year when people frequently have issues with these. They've got hydrangeas that are really big and huge, and we have these heavy rains and the flowers get loaded up with water and it pulls them to the ground, and they want to know what to do. And what you need to do is to be, in my estimation, is to be diligent about your trimming next year. It's hard to do anything about it at this point except cut off the flowers. But if you'll be diligent, the Annabelle hydrangeas, for instance, at my yard, they're really bad about that. If you go for years without trimming them, you allow those stems to get very long. You've got this weighted bloom out there full of water. It's going to pull it to the ground. But on a short stem, they'll stand up nice and tall and won't lay over at all. And so I don't have issues with them at all. And I'll try to bring a photograph in here that really demonstrates what I'm talking about clearly. I never had trouble with that, but we cut them down to about a foot or less every winter, and allow them to come back out, and we don't have that problem.
And the final question this week: what can be done for overwatered begonias that leaves are dropping and falling off of?
Stop.
Yeah. You want this one?
James Barr wants to know.
Well, if it was a houseplant begonia, I would just cut it back. So if I and I have overwatered my like cane begonias before, and they do drop the leaves, I'll cut it back and then it'll reflesh towards the base of the plant. So I leave at least like an inch and a half close to a node where that original leaf was coming out, and mine will rebranch. Now, as far as like annual begonias go, that might be a little bit different.
No, they're all the same. I mean, begonia's begonia, and if they are very susceptible to being overwatered, so the stems get a little mushy on you.
Rot.
Which you get a rot scenario going on. Once you get to that point,
They're done.
They're pretty much done. I'm sorry to say. Now, if you do have some life to it, like Caroline said, you can give it a cutback and probably need to repot it because you probably got a soil-borne fungi in there that's making the rot happen and accelerating it. So if you have anything to grab onto with the stem or whatever, then pull it out and try to get off all the mush, repot it in a different pot, and hopefully you'll do better.
Yeah, and if you've done it in the ground, if you've planted them like a bed of them in the ground, pay attention to things like downspouts, and your soil preparation is extremely
Overhangs,
important.
yes.
Anything that's going to be a contributor to water that is going to make one spot different than the others by keeping it wetter, you should be avoided.
All righty. Well, folks, the music means that this edition of the At Home Show, this
That
Saturday
went really
morning,
fast.
It did. It was only like an hour.
Yeah.
I think. But next Saturday morning, we're coming back to the Green Room Studios here at Bates Nursery
That's
and
right.
Garden Center. Everybody from all the At Homies, we all want you to know, woo is the word of the week, so be out there and be safe.
Woo.
Woo! All right. Hey, be safe. We love you. Join us here on the At Home Show next Saturday morning. We'll be here for you.